Welcome everyone to DRJ's webinar series. I'm Bob Arnold, President here at DRJ. We thank you for your attendance today and we hope you gather some great information from today's webinar. Everyone's phone has it muted and we ask you to utilize the question panel you'll find on the right hand side of your screen. Our speaker today will attempt to answer as many of these as possible at the end of today's session. Today's sponsor is Acronis. Today's topic is the 7 rules of IT disaster recovery. Our speaker today is Mark Jameson. Mark joined Acronis with the acquisition of Nscale in September of 2014. As General Manager of Disaster Recovery Services, Mark has responsibility for the growth of the Acronis Global Disaster Recovery portfolio. Previously, Mark built over 30 years of experience in the disaster recovery and information technology markets. Most recently, Mark was the Vice President of Global DR as a Service Sales and Marketing at Nscale. Prior to Nscale, Mark was Vice President of Sales at SunGard Availability Services and also held various sales and sales leadership roles with Unisys Corporation and IBM. With no further introduction, I'd like to turn the mic over to Mark.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for joining us today, everybody. So what I'll go ahead and do is step through our presentation, and I can skip who I am since Bob already covered that, and talk a little bit about the agenda. So what I'm going to do is I'm really going to break it into 3 categories. I'm going to talk about the recoveries that many organizations and businesses face with disaster recovery, and then talk about the 7 rules of IT disaster recovery and how they apply to those challenges being faced. And then finally I'm going to wrap it up with applying how Acronis helps our clients with disaster recovery and really looks at those 7 rules and how our solution helps them to fit in that space. So when you look at the disaster recovery challenges that are faced by companies, it's really not if, it's when. You all know that disasters happen every day, and while most people are going to think of the major disasters like a hurricane or a superstorm or some other regional type event, reality is most of the disasters are minor disasters. They're operator error, they're a single server disaster, and you have to be able to consider all these. But when you look at how do I prepare my business so that whether it's a minor disaster, an operational disaster, or a major disaster, that we're not impacted and that we can continue to stay in business and operate and service the need of our end users and our clients. So when customers are looking at disaster recovery for their production environment, it's truly becoming more and more complex. One of the beauties of technology is, as we've evolved over the years, we have so many different options, we have so many disparate systems, we have so many pieces of technology, but that becomes some of the problems. There's so much complexity built into what we do. It's not, I kind of chuckle when you look at it, it's not a good old day that you didn't worry about the computer crashing because the typewriter, didn't crash, it just kept working. Well, we've introduced a lot of complexity into our solutions, and thus, you really have to take a hard look at what's the best way to protect it and support it. Whether this be the infrastructure, the data, the systems, and again, as you all know, the business has become more and more reliant on IT services. Things that we oftentimes would have looked at that we had a manual workaround, we don't even have manual workarounds anymore. So we really need to make sure that IT remains in place and is available in order for the business to keep functioning. So when you look at how do you do protect your business, and there's a variety of ways to look at it. Quite frankly, one of the most common ways still is to do it yourself. To build a solution and to deploy it in whether it be your own data center or a co-location facility. And this really is a good way to look at it. Is in that type of environment, you're basically building the car. You're pulling all the pieces together. You're managing the pieces together. One of the things I've seen a lot of times over the years with clients that have moved to some type of service-based disaster recovery, it's been because they had an in-house solution that just did not keep pace of what they needed. Whether it didn't get tested frequently, nobody was supporting it, the person that built it left, and it wasn't being maintained, and then when it came time to use it in the event of a disaster, it just wasn't there to meet the needs of the business. You tend to see that when you truly look at the cost of a do-it-yourself disaster recovery, it tends to be fairly expensive. Most people are going to look at, well, here's what it costs me to buy the hardware and the software and maybe the space and power. But they don't look at all the other intangibles. What does it cost to support it? What does it cost if that person who's doing the disaster failover isn't there to do it? What's it cost to test? There's a lot of other intangibles that need to be factored into it. And when you do that, it's not as inexpensive as people might think. Again, still tends to be complex. You're building a lot of moving parts together, and as I mentioned, is it reliable? When the time comes to actually use it, is it going to be there for you? So if you're not going to build it yourself, then your option is to go with some type of service provider, and deliver the service. And you would think that, all right, that's an easy thing to do. I'm just going to decide to use a service provider. Well, reality is there's a whole bunch of different architectures you can look at when you're looking at a service provider. I'm going to actually start at the bottom here and work my way up. I can look at a service provider who's maybe leveraging their own infrastructure that they use for their cloud services, let's say, and they've taken all these tools and built a solution to meet somebody's needs. So that's an option. I could look at your traditional legacy disaster recovery providers, whether it be the SunGuards of the world or the IBMs, and where they have some big mammoth data centers that they've built. I can look at those solutions that maybe start with an on-premise appliance, and that's the world they came from. Of course, the public cloud and the data movers that move data in and out of the public cloud is an alternative. You look at those clients or those vendors that do backup-centric solutions. They started from the backup world, and then you also look at those that started from the disaster recovery as a service world. And I highlight this differently. And then there's those that do disaster recovery as a service with backup, with true world-class backup, and looking at what's the right solution to meet your needs. And I would actually say that any one of these could be the right solution to meet your needs, depending upon what your use case is, depending upon what you're trying to solve. What is your recovery time objectives? Are you trying to do backup and DR together, which in the mid-market is becoming more and more common. If you talk to Gartner or IDC or Forrester, they're going to tell you that, for mid-market clients, what's truly leading the industry today is solutions that give you backup and DR with one solution. So those are the things that you look at, and there's a lot of different options, a lot of different choices, and it's really sometimes difficult to make that right choice. But these are what we see and our clients see every day. So with that, now that we've talked about the fact that there's complexity in choosing the right IT disaster recovery solution, that there is a variety of different options. I mean, even like I said, the do-it-yourself option, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do it. And there's a whole bunch of different architectures you can choose from, not to mention within each architecture, there's a whole bunch of different vendors, partners that you can choose, a whole bunch of different alternatives, and each of those guys do it a little bit differently from the next guy. So again, it's really, okay, what do I do? What do I do if I'm this business trying to protect one of my most precious assets, which is my data, my information? We really think there are 7 rules. So I don't care which of those models you fit into or which one you're considering you're looking at. There's really 7 rules of IT disaster recovery that you need to consider. And that's where I'd like to spend some time right now going through those 7 rules. Here they are right now. I'll just at a high level mention them, and then we'll dig into each one. So first of all, you plan ahead and document. Very critical. That's a big one. Replicate the applications. Protect on-site and off-site, automate, test, absolutely important. Remember the security. Security is a big thing. I can't think of a single time I've talked to somebody about disaster recovery in the cloud and not have the security be one of the discussion topics. And then choosing the right partner. As I said before, not every partner is going to be the right partner. Not every architecture is going to be the right architecture. It really is dependent upon what your needs are and what you're looking for as an organization. So plan ahead. So the first thing you need to do is you got to look at, assume the worst. Overestimate the risk. Even though you're going to be, solving for the smoke and rubble scenario, or the Superstorm Sandy that completely floods your facility, you also have to, you're going to assume the worst, you're going to plan for the worst, but you also have to plan for, what if I just lost a set of servers that maybe ran an application stack? What if I just lost one server? So if you plan right and you have all that documented, and you can choose, all right, what's the easiest path in order for me to recover the business? What's the quickest path to recover the business? And it's not just one person putting a plan together. You need to make sure that you share it across with the business, with others in IT, because people need to be able to say, well, yes, will this plan meet the business needs, or did you leave something out from an IT perspective? Or even more importantly, people have to understand the plan, because the person who wrote the plan very well won't be the person doing the recovery, or might not be available when they do the recovery. I used to love, when we did desktop or tabletop exercises with clients, and we would, start the process, and we knew who the key people were with the recovery, and we'd tell them, well, you get to go home. You didn't make it through the disaster, so the rest of you get to recover without these people. And if without a good plan, you can't do that. It really needs to be a solid plan. And the last one is evolve. It needs to be living, breathing. It needs to be something that you're updating continually. I don't know how many times I've walked into an IT shop and saw some plan sitting in a notebook up in the corner, and my first question to them is, I asked them, when was the last time you opened that? And it's not uncommon to get a chuckle and say, yeah, it's been a little while. So definitely plan. It's a real big thing. Replicate the application. So oftentimes people are worried, okay, I got my data protected, I got my data backed up, but if you backed up the applications, if you backed up the operating system, have you backed up everything that you're going to need to actually restore your business, whether it be you're restoring it back into your local site, or whether it's restoring it in the cloud. So that's the other thing you need to look at. If I'm running SQL, do I have all my SQL applications backed up? Do I have my web servers backed up? So absolutely critical, everything that's needed to serve the needs of the business and the users, do you back it up? Do you have an image of that that you then can fail back to? Number 3, we subscribe to an on-site, off-site hybrid model. It's very important, if you think about disaster recovery, if I only have a single server that was impacted, I don't want to fail my whole data center into the cloud and run in the cloud. Why would I do that? I want to quickly be able to go over, if I have some type of local appliance that I can activate the server on or pull the data back from, that is the absolute fastest way to keep the business in business. You're already on the same LAN. You don't have to go deal with the network off premise, and again, that gives you that immediate availability. But reality is, if you have it on site, that's not the disaster recovery. What if I lost the site? What if I lost the region? You then need to look at having it off-site, and needless to say, you need to do that into geographically dispersed areas. So I actually had a client earlier in my career that actually spent a lot of money, and they did a real good job of building a second site, second data center, and had full redundancy. It was very good. I never was quite sure why they did it across the parking lot. So you really need to look at where you put that second location to get it out of the geography, get it out of whatever you could get a regional event to hit you. But very important. And then also multiple copies of the data. So being able to say, okay, I have my production, but then I have a backup copy on premise. I have another backup copy off-site, and you even have the option with some solution to say, you know what, I want to go to multiple sites. I want to also put it off to physical media. So you need to look at, at least, keeping multiple copies of the data, and then also, where you store it and how you store it for your longer term retention. Number 4, automate. As I alluded to earlier, when you have an event, not necessarily, the IT key resources can't necessarily be there to perform that event, and recover the servers or the data center. So the more you can automate, the more you can have multiple people involved in a failover. So there's not that one key person that if that person's not available, you can't do a failover. If you looked at Superstorm Sandy, some of those were, there's difficult for people to get to where they could in order to do the event. If you look at Katrina, a little older there, but you look at Katrina, one of the challenges that I know many businesses had, and I had the opportunity to talk to some of them, is that they had some of their people that not only could they not find them and get them, but they had some that, they just said, I'm not going. I got my family to worry about. I'm not doing this. So the more you can automate, the more you have to rely on just a certain skill set. In addition to that, people aren't doing failovers and DR on a day-to-day basis. So the more you can take out that human error factor, the human, factor where they're not doing something they do every day, thus, there's less mistakes you can get made by automating. Absolutely. And then you also see the automation will also introduce speed into the recovery. Test. I mean, absolutely the most critical thing. People think about disaster recoveries, and I don't care whether it's disaster recovery as a service in the cloud or it's been traditional, maybe go to some, ship your data to some data center and recover there. Reality is when you look at the number of big regional disasters that there have been, and you look at even the single site type events, the number, although everybody's probably going to experience them, it's not as if everybody's going to experience 10 or 20 of them. What ends up happening, though, is people need to test more often to make sure it works. I often look at this in that first bullet, DR solution works when you buy it. No, it's when you test it. And when you also need to take it to the next level is you introduce DR into your change control process. So when you are making changes into production or you're rolling out new systems or new applications, you should always be looking at DR and you should be testing that to ensure that it continues to work. And you should test regularly, whether that be on a daily basis, whether that be every several weeks, whether it be a couple times a year. There's different requirements for different organizations, but you need to do it on a regular basis. And we also recommend to people do it ad hoc. Get people out of their comfort zone and say, okay, we're going to go test this now and see if it really will work. Because when a DR event strikes, you didn't have the chance to prepare for it. I always like to. I had a client again years and years ago, and as part of their DR plan, they would ship a piece of equipment to the DR center in the event of a disaster. And they always told their business that they had a recovery time of 48 hours. This is, needs to say, I kind of dated the client a little bit there because it's just a couple decades ago. But the interesting thing was they had to ship a piece of equipment, and it was going to take 24 to 48 hours if they could even get it out the door to ship the piece of the equipment. And so I always looked and said, how can you say 48 hours if it takes you 48 hours just to ship the equipment? And then you start your clock. So, reality is you really got to test and you really got to look at what's the true recovery time from the time the event strikes till you get the business back running again. And then remember security. That's a big thing. In today's world, security is becoming more and more critical. You really want to be looking at wherever you're having that second site. Look at it as if it was your production site, because that's what it is. It's a production environment. Make sure you're housing your data in a secure data center. If you're a company that has compliance certification requirements or any type of certifications, make sure your data center has the right certifications. Make sure it has compliance certifications if those are required. If encryption, that's a key thing. I mean, it's interesting when you look at encryption. I would always tell clients you definitely want to encrypt your data in flight. That's a given. And then, of course, encryption at rest. That becomes a consideration. Quite frankly, oftentimes you need to think of the trade-off between the performance when you're running versus the security. But it's definitely an option you should be able to have. Whatever solution you have is to encrypt at rest if need be. Of course, a great audit or the ability to track any changes, any activity, and then finally, as I alluded to before, the compliance. If you're governed by some type of compliance requirement, you need to make sure that whatever you do, whether it be do it yourself or with a provider, meets that compliance requirement. And then 7 is really find the right ITDR partner. Do they have the knowledge of what you need? Do they understand what a failover is? Do they understand what a failback is? I mean, it's interesting. Oftentimes you'll talk to different vendors out there, and they'll talk to you about how they do a failover, but it's not uncommon to not hear about the failback side, because the failback is oftentimes, or most time, more difficult, and it takes more consideration than the failover. If I'm failing back to, a server that was in existence before and it's just something broke and it got fixed, and I'm just failing back, that's one thing. If I had a complete wipeout of a data center and I'm moving the data center somewhere else and I have all new technologies and all new architectures, failback takes a little more consideration, and so that's an interesting thing. You need to know that your partner has a good track record, a good knowledge on how to do it. Mention the track record. Have they supported events before? If you're looking at a service provider, and if you're looking at your own team, have they gone through a DR event? Again, I had a client that it wasn't too long ago, and it's a major company that the interesting thing about it, they were going to, for one of their data centers, it was in their headquarters, and the city was going to shut off the power, for some maintenance in the building, and so they needed to prepare for it. Well, first of all, they didn't have a UPS or generator, so that was issue number one. But then the issue number two was they realized they hadn't ever powered off some of the servers that they had, and they had to actually figure out, how do we do it? Do we have the right people to go do it? And so again, you need to look at the track record of the your own people, and definitely any service providers. Have they gone through a disaster? Have they been there to help others fail over and fail back? Look at the technologies. Look at those solutions that have proven themselves. The ones that are recognized by the industry analysts as industry-leading technologies and services. That's also key. It's I often look at companies and say, do you really want to bet your future on something that hasn't been proven? There's been a lot of different studies and measurements out there of what it does happen to a business if they suffer an event and they don't get back in business right away, if they're down for a week or if they're down for 2 weeks. The odds are either a business was significantly impacted in a negative way, or within a year they're out of business. Because the consumers these days are more and more fickle, and you really need to make sure you have the right solution in place. Again, I mentioned recognized by experts. What do the analysts say? Are they saying this is a good way to do it? There's a whole bunch of different solutions out there, as we already talked about, and there's not a solution that's absolutely the perfect one for everybody, and it's really figuring out what are the right solutions, what are the experts saying, and looking at that, and then finally, for different solutions from service providers, what are the customers saying? What has been their experience? Was that partner there when they need them? Not only on a day-to-day basis, but in the event of a disaster, in the event of an issue, and were they there to help them through that event? Those are the 7 rules that we really recommend for companies to look at or organizations to look at when they're saying what is the right ITDR solution. What I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time now talking about how Acronis helps. And I'm going to do this more from, I'm just going to step through our solution, but I want to do it more from here are some of the things that we have done in order to help address, what are some of the key things you have to be able to do in a solution, in the 7 rules. And you'll see from it how we built it into what we provide to our clients. So the first thing that we do, and I need to mention, is with our solution is actually an all-in-one. We do world-class backup and disaster recovery all in one solution. So when clients, this is an interesting thing, for a lot of organizations, because sometimes they have a tough time, justifying a disaster recovery solution because maybe the executives see it as that's an insurance policy or that's a discretionary spend, but backup isn't. But when you have one solution that does both of them, that makes it a very powerful recovery, return on investment that you can look at and deliver all the functionality that you need with one solution. Is how fast is it? Is it giving you that guarantee that you'll be back up and running within 15 minutes? I talked about automation. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in a second. Can you test and what type of support you have? So one of the things that we do in our solution, we actually have, it's very automated, and you can actually build runbooks in our solution, and our clients love this capability. And what you do is you script out the failover of an entire data center. We give you the templates to put a paper plan together, but also the tool to do that automated in the system. And it's a GUI interface. You drop and drag. But what you basically have done is you scripted out the failover of a complete data center, the failover of maybe an application stack. There could be multiple type of runbooks created. And literally, with a couple of clicks of a key, you started the recovery of your data center. And it doesn't even have to be somebody that's in IT or very knowledgeable on it. They can start that recovery for you. Very easy. So that's one way that we've allowed our clients to not only take that paper plan that used to sit there and get stagnant, but apply it to a plan that actually is part of the system, living, breathing. And by the way, we actually have a repository as part of that runbook where you can store paper plans and any other types of documentation that you want with it. What are the market leaders, what do the leaders in the industry say? What do the analysts say? Here's one that we felt real good about, Forrester in 2014. It says Nscaled, as we indicate here, we were acquired by Acronis in late last year, and now we're part of the Acronis umbrella. And if you look at the Forrester, did the Forrester Wave, and for disaster recovery as a service, it was the first one they did. And you see where we were ranked. We were up in the leaders side, very highly ranked, right up there next to IBM. And we were very proud of that. And trust me, we didn't get ranked up there based upon the size of the company or our geographical reach back when we were Nscaled. We got ranked up there because of the solution that we brought to market. And one of the things that we scored really high on was security. It's inbuilt into the solution from the beginning. Our solution was designed from the ground up as a multi-tenant environment, and we built the security there in order to provide that multi-tenancy from the beginning. So we've received very high scores for that. I fast forward a year, and I now look at Gartner. We weren't in the leader side, but we were the highest of the challengers in the Magic Quadrant. This was the first Gartner's view of disaster recovery as a service. You can see where we ranked there, and as you can see, here's what our customers say. We had high customer satisfaction. We had strong experience. We had the fully automated runbooks I talked about. But most importantly, the last one, we had really good non-disruptive testing, which is that number 5 test. With our service, we allow our clients to test a handful of servers every day. Anytime they want, they can go test those servers. And then what we do is we have 2 other things that are really cool. Those every 8 weeks, we allow our clients to test everything they have, so they can go out and test their entire environment. But you know what? A lot of companies are going to go, Mark, I don't need to test every 8 weeks. That's a little too much. I want to test a couple of times a year. One of the other things we allow clients to do is automated testing. So during that 8-week cycle, they can go ahead and flag their servers to be automatically tested by our system, not by us, by our system. And we'll go out there, the system will go out there and we'll activate the servers, make sure they come up, make sure they acquire their IP address and bring them down. Now, we don't test the applications at that state because we don't have your credentials. We don't have any of your sign-on or passwords or anything. And so we just make sure they come up and and what we do is send you a report. And so let's say you had 100 servers, you can look at that report and let's say 98 of them have the green check that they were good and 2 were red. You know that, okay, I don't need to go test 100 of them. I can just go look at those 2 that were red and see why they were red and work on making sure that they're working. So it's a very nice tool that allows our clients to, even when they're not available to test, the system can do that for them. What you get with us, as we mentioned, a complete solution, protects the files, the folders, the servers, the entire data center. And this is key. If you really look at our solution down here on the left side, it's all based off a recovery console. We provide local site protection. We provide backup into the cloud. And then we do a complete compute grid that clients use to do the disaster recovery in the cloud. So our clients can recover both on-premise and in the cloud, and they do it all through that same recovery console on the left side. But one of the reasons we're able to do it so fast, in reality, we have different types of server protection in our cloud. It can be an active environment, or our most popular one is what we call a warm recovery server. Those servers we have a 15-minute SLA. In reality, it's about 90 seconds. But it's because we protect everything. We protect images of the data, of the operating system, of the applications. We take a complete image and we're able to bring it back up rapidly. And that same image you're able to use for your backup and your retention, and just like you would any other world-class solution, and do your different type of searches against it. You can catalog it, a whole bunch of different things that you can do and you would expect in a backup solution. But again, the key thing is we replicate everything. We replicate the applications, the OS, and the data. Peace of mind with what we do. It's really, with all the testing we do, the automation, the SLA guarantees, it's an industry-leading solution. But again, it's the automate is really, really big. I know that in my years in the industry and with some other, roles I was in, one of the things I always was concerned about is doing that test or doing that disaster, and would there be, how much human error would be introduced into the process? And with the ability to automate it, it really does eliminate that human error, and it rapidly brings back servers that, rather than sitting in there keying a whole bunch of steps, you have a system that quickly does it. And what we see with our clients is they're able to bring back servers in 90 seconds. And they're able to, depend upon the size of the data center and the order of which they have to recover things in. We had a client that actually, before he started using our solution, it took several hours to recover his data center. And with our solution, he has everything recovered, back up and running, even, and he has a certain order that he has to go in under 45 minutes. So it really, helps our clients and with the automation that's built into the solution. We talked about the hybrid model, number 3, on-site, off-site. That's the foundation of our solution. We protect Windows and Linux and physical and virtual, multiple hypervisors, storage agnostic, all the things you want. But we also do that on-premise with a local appliance and in the cloud. So you always are able to activate a handful of servers locally as needed and recover data, and you can define that, and then also you can protect and recover everything in the cloud. And you can also have not only different retention locally and in the cloud, you can decide maybe there might be some test environments you only want to back up locally and you don't ever want to send it to the cloud because it's not as critical. A lot of flexibility in that hybrid on-site, off-site model that we bring to the table there. And Acronis is a proven leader. When you look at the Acronis solution, it's more than just one thing. It's really a data protection. It's really looking at all that you need in your environment, whether it be disaster recovery, whether it be full image backup, whether it be endpoint backup, whether it be the content management, it's enterprise file sync share. There's a whole bunch of things that we bring to our clients that protects their data, no matter where it is, from the mobile devices up through your data center. As you see here, from a leadership perspective, we had over 3 million new licenses in 2014. We have about 300,000 business customers and 100,000 corporate free trial downloads last year. I actually like that. If you go back to what I was talking about in the Forrester Wave, where I made the comment that we didn't get where we were based upon the size of the company. And we truly didn't. We were, because we were just a small startup at the time, we got marked down in that area. Now that's not the case. We went from an engineering department that had a dozen engineers to an engineering department that has hundreds of engineers focused on making the solution an industry leading solution and keeping it there. And on top of that, we went from being a primarily North America service provider of our solution to being a global provider. So today we have two, and these are our disaster recovery data centers. We also have additional backup-only data centers. So today we have 2 data centers in the North America, one in Dallas, Texas, one in Ashburn, Virginia. We have another data center in London. We have another data center with one of our partners in Japan. We have a data center that's coming into Singapore, and actually the one that's not on here, we also have a data center that's up and running in Frankfurt, Germany. So we have data centers across the globe to not only service our clients in those different regions of the world, but also we have a lot of clients that have business operations throughout the globe and can come to us and say, hey, I need to protect some of my business in North America, I need to protect some of it into Europe, I need to protect some of it into Asia. We have the locations to support that across the globe with our client base. So we really do believe in that sense, Acronis not only has the experience of backing up and disaster recovery, has the depth of resources to make sure we provide industry-leading solutions, but also has the global reach to support the needs of our customers. We really look at, for us, having that all-in-one backup and disaster recovery service to give you world-class capabilities of both backup and disaster recovery. With that, I'm ready to move to the Q&A part of this session. I will say that if you'd like more information, you can always go to our website at www.acronis.com, or you can contact my team directly just by dr@acronis.com. And we're always there to provide more information for you, or look at giving you a demo of how we can protect your business today. So, Bob, with that, I see if we have any questions.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Mark, for some great information shared here today. If you do have any questions for Mark, again, you could find the question panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We've got a few here that have been submitted already. In regards to your example earlier of an RTO of 15 minutes, do you recall how many servers that was?
So so the RTO is actually per server. So when the RTO 15 minutes is just our legal language. The actual server is about 90 seconds, and you can activate them in parallel. That's actually one of the beauties of the runbook that I talked about. When we first started, this is a few years ago, we only had it by server, and so you could very rapidly recover a server. But the problem was, if I had only 5 servers, that's pretty easy. I could go do 5 of them, and I could do them in parallel. It still took a human intervention. But if I wanted to do 100 of them, that's kind of a time-consuming process to go do 100 of them. What the runbook actually does is you can, let's say, for example, I want to recover a database server is the first thing, and then after that I have 40 application servers that need to come up, and I can actually have them in the runbook all on the same line to come up in parallel. So they're all recovering, in about 90 seconds or so in parallel. So that's one of the beauties of the system. All
right, wonderful. One of the rules of IT disaster recovery is test, test, test. Do DR as a service companies typically charge for tests?
That's a hit and miss. I would say, although I've seen some that do charge for it, and especially some charge for it when you want to do more testing than is normally allowed. A lot of us don't. As we said, we don't charge for it. You can test any 3 servers anytime you want. And by the way, our definition of testing is fairly flexible. It could be you have a new release that you want to test before you put it into production. You can test it in your DR environment. We don't have a problem with that. It's not like maybe you might face with a public cloud where you're now having to pay for consumption of resources, and definitely you would pay for any movement of data that you would have. So for us, though, there is no charge.
All right, staying on that test topic here, how often should, or I guess from a best practice perspective, how often should we test our IT disaster recovery solution?
So I would recommend this. This is based on what I've seen, and some of it goes back to different companies have different requirements, and if you think about the criticality of the data, it could change. But in general, I would recommend that you look at I'm going to use it on the daily basis, but it's really on the change basis. Whenever you're making a change, you're loading in a new software release, you're putting a new server into production, you should test that. You don't go test the whole environment, but you should test that server. You should test that application. That's where being able to test a handful of servers anytime you want is important. You also should be able to do on a periodic basis, whether it be 8 weeks, 16 weeks, whatever you want, an application stack. So you're not testing everything, but you're testing an application stack to make sure that application stack works. And then I would go on to say, at least a couple times a year, minimum, you should test your entire environment to make sure it works.
All right, with multiple data centers, can you guarantee that all data backup is kept in the country?
Yeah, definitely that's something to look at. We do guarantee it, so you actually as a client select the data center that you want the data to go to, and we guarantee that the data won't leave the country. Matter of fact, it won't leave that data center.
All right, can we protect our Microsoft Exchange servers with Acronis?
Great question. The reason it's a great question, I want to talk about the flexibility of how we protect different types of applications. So Microsoft Exchange is a great way. We have, first of all, one of the things I want to mention is we have in our environment, all of our clients have an Active Directory with us. So that's one of the beauties of the solution, one of the ways we can recover very quickly. But they also can look at, and so what I'm referring to is we have an active environment. We have that always on part of the solution for our clients. Clients can have Exchange DAGs with us. So they actually could be running an Exchange DAG in our environment. They could be doing SQL mirroring into our environment. That all ties in to our disaster recovery solution. But on the flip side, they also can be backing up their Exchange environment. So yes, they absolutely can back it up. They can back it up on the local appliance. They can back it up into the cloud. And the beauty of it is they actually can do a granular recovery of being able to go all the way down and recover just the mailbox. So gives you that ability to back it all up, get an image of it, have instant availability with an Exchange DAG, but then also be able to go do granular recovery.
All right, how many of your clients encrypt data at rest?
Another great question. It's actually interesting. If I looked at it from a percentage basis, probably relatively small. Less than 10% of my clients do. 100% of our clients encrypt data in flight. That's a mandatory part of our solution. But it really comes back to the clients, needless to say, as you might think, that are encrypting at rest tend to be those that have compliance requirements around it, and a couple that have had that's been their decision. I almost can flip it around and say, if you think about it, how many businesses encrypt their data at rest in the production environment, and it's a relatively low percentage. The beauty about us is that it's inbuilt into the solution, so you can actually, what you do is you can actually, if you want to encrypt it at rest, you actually encrypt it right on the local appliance, and it stays encrypted throughout the whole environment. It'll also be encrypted at flight, in transit automatically, but at rest it will stay. When you encrypt on the local appliance, it automatically stays encrypted in the cloud.
All right. Do you test with the company's vendors? I'm assuming external vendors.
So another good question. When you look at testing, again, that's the environment. We open up the system, so you have the ability to do self-service type testing. One of the things that we will do with our clients is we have a segregated, confined test environment for each client. So it's a sandbox, they can play in that. And if you think about that, that's important because I don't want to get any IP conflicts or anything else to disrupt production. However, what we do as part of that, we'll work with our clients to open up some of the networks. So if they have some type of service provider that they have to communicate with, or some other vendor that needs to get access into the solution as part of their testing, absolutely, we provide that capability to our clients.
All right. Do you have any support for handling mainframes?
In one area. So today, what we do, we actually have a partner that we work with. We're focused in on, our focus is on Windows and Linux. And we also support with a partner iSeries. So whether it's AS400 or AIX, a company called Meridian IT, they have their data center where they provide disaster recovery as a service for iSeries. We provide it for Windows and Linux. We actually have multiple clients now that are using this service jointly provided, where we connected our data centers together on the back end, and you're able to support both your Windows and Linux, and MVS or AIX environments with us, through a partnership with Meridian IT. Today we definitely don't protect something like a Solaris or an MVS or something like that.
All right, great. That looks like the final question. There are a couple here a little more technical, I think best handled offline, and so we'll follow up with you directly after the webinar has ended. Any parting words here today, Mark?
Well, again, my suggestion is, disaster recovery is an interesting thing. It's now come down from a pricing perspective and an investment perspective that it used to be only economical for the big enterprises, and so when just 5 to 10 years ago, you would see it's the larger enterprises that have truly had robust disaster recovery solutions out there. Everybody else was kind of doing pieces of it, but it just wasn't economical. And with the advent of technology, with storage getting cheaper, with networking costs coming down, it's now very economical for all sizes of business to look at having truly implemented disaster recovery solutions, not just backing up the data, because I do realize that a lot of companies still define their disaster recovery as backing the data up and then restoring it, and they could be out of business for 24, 48, 72 hours. But it's really, they can now afford to do disaster recovery. And as we look at that mid-market, and what we think that's really important is now you can do both the backup function and the disaster recovery function all in one solution, from a single vendor who's your partner for the protection of your data, not only in your data center, but you could use us for protecting your mobility devices, your remote locations, your workstations, doing your file sync and share. You get that whole data protection umbrella all from one partner. So that'd be my my parting thoughts. We're here to, if you would like more information, again, please feel free to reach out at us at dr@acronis.com or www.acronis.com. And then also, I know, Bob, we've made the presentation available, and happy to answer any questions that people might have, after the session's over.
All right, wonderful. Thanks again, Mark, for your time here today. Thanks again, everyone, for their attendance today. We again hope you found some great information from today's webinar. DRJ would also like to thank Mark for his time here today, as well as Acronis for sponsoring today's webinar. As Mark mentioned, we will be emailing everyone a link to the recording of this webinar. It should be tomorrow. You can view this recording as frequently as you wish or share it with your peers. Thanks again, and this now ends today's webinar.